Some names just become verbs, right? We Google things, we Xerox stuff, and every now and then people get Ponzi'd. So today, we're going to dive into the story of the man himself, the guy whose name literally became the definition of financial fraud, Charles Ponzi.
So, what was his big promise? How about this? A 50% profit on your investment. I mean, just think about that for a second. A 50% profit. That was the hook, and man, was it a powerful one.
And if that wasn't enough, here's the kicker. He promised that insane return in just 45 days. Now, you got to put yourself in the mindset of the time, right? This is 1920. The world is just coming out of a horrific world war, a devastating pandemic. People were just desperate for some good news for a fast track to a better life. I mean, your local bank was paying maybe 5% a year. Ponzi's offering 50% in a month and a half. It sounded like the American dream, gift-wrapped. And here he is. This is the guy making that incredible promise. Carlo Ponzi, or Charles as he was known. Super charismatic, always dressed to the nines. This Italian immigrant who, for this one bright, shiny moment in history, looked like he genuinely figured out how to print money.
So how does a guy like that even get to this point? Well, Ponzi's story, it really starts out like the classic American dream. But, it takes this dark twist into a total nightmare. He definitely didn't start at the top. Oh no, he started right at the very bottom.
And honestly, Ponzi himself said it best. He had this incredible quote about his own ambition. When he landed in Boston from Italy back in 1903, he said he had almost nothing to his name, except, and I quote, $1 million in hopes. He just had this unshakable belief that he was meant to be rich.
But that ambition, well, it pretty quickly found an outlet in crime. If you look at his early years, you see this pattern start to form. He gets fired from a job for stealing from customers. Then he moves up to Montreal and gets a front row seat watching a bank run a scam, basically paying off old depositors with money from new ones. Sound familiar? That little lesson stuck with him. It all led to him doing time in prison for forgery, for smuggling, all of this before his big famous scheme even got off the ground.
Okay, so after he gets out of jail, Ponzi is hunting for that one big idea, his golden ticket. And then in 1919, he gets a letter from Spain, and bam, he thinks he's found it. An idea that was just so smart, so plausible, that it seemed like the perfect, totally legal way to get rich.
He called it arbitrage. Basically, using something called international reply coupons, or IRCs. And the idea, you have to admit, was kind of brilliant, mostly because it was so complicated. See, after World War I, inflation was totally out of control in places like Italy. This made these postal coupons super cheap over there. So the thinking was, you buy tons of these cheap coupons in Europe, bring them to the US, exchange them for American postage stamps, which were worth way more, then you sell the stamps for cash. Boom, huge profits. On paper, it sounds like a stroke of genius. So he takes this genius-sounding idea and launches his company in Boston, the Securities Exchange Company, and he starts promising those crazy 50% returns. And let me tell you, people went for it. They just flooded in. We're talking everyone from regular working-class folks to the Boston high society types. They were all just desperate to believe this could work. But, and this is the big question, right? Was any of it actually real? And the answer is a hard no, not even close. That whole complicated story about postal coupons, it was all just a smokescreen, a distraction. The truth was way simpler. It was that old trick he saw back in that Montreal bank. He was just robbing Peter to pay Paul. He was taking money from new investors to pay off the early ones. That created this incredibly powerful illusion of a profitable business. And for a few incredible months, that illusion held up. Ponzi became an overnight millionaire. He's buying mansions, fancy cars, living the high life. But you know how it goes. Any scheme built on nothing but lies is basically a house of cards. It's just waiting for a little breeze to knock it all down. And it was only a matter of time before someone decided to take a closer look. And this right here, this just shows you how big the lie really was. When investigators finally started digging, they found something stunning. To actually cover all the investments Ponzi had taken, he would have needed about 160 million of those postal coupons. The reality? There were only about 27,000 of them in the entire world. So this wasn't just unlikely, it was completely mathematically impossible. No way it could have worked. And when the end came, man, it came fast. There was this glowing article about him in the Boston Post that just sent money pouring in. But then literally 2 days later, that same newspaper started asking some really tough questions. The whole thing just unraveled in a matter of weeks. His own PR guy exposed him, and by August 12th, it was all over. Ponzi walked into the federal building and surrendered. So when the dust finally settled, his investors had lost everything. We're talking $20 million. And remember, this is 1920 money. That's like hundreds of millions of dollars today. Thousands of people, many of them had put their entire life savings into this, were just wiped out, gone.
So, what about the man himself, the one who called this whole thing the best show ever staged? Well, for Charles Ponzi, the collapse of his little empire was really just the start of a very long, very slow fall from grace.
Okay, get this. He gets hit with 86 counts of mail fraud, spends years in prison. But while he's out on bail, he flees to Florida and starts another scam. This time, he's selling plots of land that were literally underwater. I mean, the nerve. He gets caught again, does even more time, and is finally deported back to Italy. He ended up dying broke, nearly blind, in a charity hospital down in Brazil in 1949. So, yeah, the man Charles Ponzi pretty much faded away into history. But the name of his scheme? Oh, that didn't go anywhere. He actually did create a legacy for himself, just probably not the one he had in mind.
And this is it. This is the definition of what he perfected. At its core, a Ponzi scheme needs a constant stream of new money to stay alive. It's not making any real profit, it's just a shell game, shuffling money from the newest investors to the earliest ones. And it works, right up until the moment the new money dries up. And that's when the whole thing comes crashing down.
And check this out. This shows you just how fast his name became infamous. This is a newspaper ad for a bank, and it's from just a month after he was arrested. It's already warning people, don't be Ponzi'd. His name became a verb for getting ripped off, like instantly. His legacy was sealed right then and there.
So what did Ponzi himself think about all this at the end of his life? You know what? He had zero regrets. He was totally unrepentant. He didn't see himself as a criminal who stole people's life savings. No, he saw himself as more of an entertainer, someone who put on such a great show that it was worth the price of admission. And that's a really chilling final thought, isn't it? It's this perfect reminder that the greatest con artists, they aren't just selling you a stock or an investment. They're selling a story. They're selling hope. And they're tapping into that little part of all of us that so desperately wants to believe in something that is and always will be just too good to be true.